What was the scariest / creepiest thing that has ever happened to you? I was living with my sister and her husband in Vegas. It was a 1-bedroom apartment on the top floor of a 3-story complex. One day I was getting ready for work and called my sister because I was looking for nail clippers. Both my sister and her husband had already left for work, so I called her and said if she had any. She told me she had one on her dresser, so I went to look for it, and that's when I heard a voice asking for help. It was clear and sounded like a young Caucasian male. I'm of Mexican descent and my brother-in-law is from South America. So naturally I was confused and looked around. Again, it was a 1-bedroom apartment and it wasn't very big, so it would have been easy to spot an intruder. I didn't see anyone, so I went back to look for the clippers. There it is again. The male asking for help. Hello, can you help me? I ask who is there, and he just asks for help again. I tell him sorry I can't, I have to go to work, and that's that. Fast forward to the end of my shift and I'm home from work. I tell my sister about someone asking for help and she asks, did it sound like a young male? At first, I thought I had already told her and she was just repeating it to me. I ask if I had already told her and she says, no, I've heard it too. I think she's trolling me, so I don't think much of it. My brother-in-law comes home from work 30 minutes later. My sister then asks him, guess who Krasifax 86 talked to today? He turns pale and gets a stern loom on his face. Did the young guy ask you for help? Now I'm freaked out because he had just walked in and immediately knew what had happened. My sister was watching TV and didn't have her phone near her, so there was no way she could have told him. Never heard anything else after that, but it was freaky that they both had experienced the same thing before. When I was 10 or so, I had an incredibly vivid nightmare that I was being chased through a dark maze by a giant, disembodied hand. I woke up in a cold sweat, shaking all over, but needing to use the bathroom. I mustered my courage to get up and walk to the bathroom, and when I turned on the light, the hand was there waiting for me. I screamed at the top of my lungs and then woke up for real. Turns out I had a false awakening where you dream that you wake up. Thinking I was awake and finding my nightmare had come true was mind-numbingly terrifying. My best friend and her father dropped me off at my house after school because my parents were still working. As they were driving away, they saw a man who was a lawn care dude sneak behind me from the side of our house while I was unlocking the door with my back turned. They slammed it in reverse, honked like crazy, and he bolted. I was 14 and so frightened. That's when my innocent child view vanished. I don't know what would have happened if they didn't see him. When I was in university, I had a summer job in the town by my cottage and spent the summer living there alone. One night at about 11, I was watching TV when an 18-wheel truck pulled into my driveway. Keep in mind this is a pretty isolated area. I stood inside for a couple of minutes deciding what to do while this huge truck was idling in with its headlight shining into my front window. Instead of hiding, I grabbed a butcher knife, stepped onto the deck and yelled, "What the fuck do you want?" It turns out my neighbor forgot I was living there during the week, no car, bike to work, and told his visiting friend, a long-haul trucker, to park there overnight. The poor, unsuspecting man was checking in with his wife on the phone when I emerged, in a nightie, with a crazed look in my eyes, wielding a knife. This was likely also one of his scariest experiences. Definitely the weirdest thing was the night after my dog was put down. He wasn't allowed on my parents' bed, but sure enough, when we left the room, he would jump up and mess with the covers. My dog was put down in the morning pretty suddenly, so my mom didn't get a chance to make her bed. When we got home after a bit of grieving, my mom started to do her daily chores, and this included making the bed. I was in the room when she made the bed, and it was perfect. We both left together and watched some TV with my dad, and we were the only three in the house. After whatever we were watching was over, I saw my mom walk down the hallway, and as soon as she saw her bed she screamed. The covers were the messiest they've ever been. This happened for a couple days right after, and then just stopped. My family is completely convinced my dog's ghost hung around for a few days after he died. Years ago, I was on a cross-country trip, solo, to a family reunion. I was supposed to make it a friend's house, but there was horrible weather. It was slow moving. Then a terrible accident happened just ahead of me, and I was stuck for quite a while. All told, I was 5 hours behind schedule. I was exhausted, in need of a bathroom and a shower, so I pulled into a little strip motel off of a fairly back state road. It was obviously small and dirty, but would work in a pinch. There was a window to the outside where check-in was. The guy there write me up, then a college-aged girl, asked me if I was traveling alone. I went to hand him my ID and credit card, but he insisted cash only. Red flags were going off at this point, but I scrounged together just enough cash and he tossed me the key. The room was dirty, barely bigger than the bed. The first thing I did was go to the bathroom, then I flipped up the mattress, dirty, signs of bed bugs. A moment later, I spied a cockroach. That was it, I was out. I decided I would use the parking space at least, and sleep in the back trunk hatch of my SUV. I curled up, using a suitcase for a pillow and random clothes for a blanket, and fell asleep for an hour. I woke up aware of someone talking on a phone outside, and glanced out to see the guy from check-in standing outside. It was now around 3 AM. He finished up his call, then walked quietly over to my room, unlocked the door, and walked in. The lights didn't turn on, and a minute or two later, he came back out, slamming the door behind him, and cursing, with another guy. I hadn't seen guy to enter, so I still don't know where he came from. They angrily talked for a moment, then check-in guy walked over to my SUV. I covered up my head quickly with a shirt. After he tried the locked door, he peered in the back seat, but between my tinted windows and blending into the general mess, he didn't notice me in the hatch. The two guys walked away to the far side of the lot. Talking more, the one gesturing across the street, where a diner was. While they were distracted, I climbed up to the front seat and started up the SUV, they turning around in surprise as I pulled away. I called my friends back home and told them, but didn't want to worry my family, so I said nothing to them. When I got back home some 3 weeks later, we figured out the name of the hotel thanks to Google Maps and called the local police. They told me the place had closed down only days before I called. I was like 12 in a bathroom stall in Walmart, you know, using the bathroom, and I got this super weird feeling that someone was watching me. I slowly moved my eyes upward and toward the adjacent stall, and there was some old fucker standing on the toilet, watching me shit. I was terrified of public bathrooms for years, and they still make me uncomfortable. Nothing supernatural or creepy, but I had a grand mal seizure out of nowhere. Don't have a history of neurological disorders to be clear. Got into my car and started hearing these loud whispers and started getting real dizzy. Took the keys out of the ignition and ran back to the restaurant where my friends were at, and that's the last thing I remember before waking up to a sternum rub from EMTs. Didn't know who I was, where I was, or what the hell had happened, and there was blood everywhere. Complete memory loss is absolutely terrifying. It was my senior year of high school. On a warm May evening, I was getting ready for bed when I heard yelling coming from outside. I ignored it until I finally crawled into bed. It wasn't long after I closed my eyes that I heard "I wanna fuck you" through my open bedroom window. I was confused, so I got up and looked out my window. There was my neighbor standing at the fence that divided our yards, looking up at my open window. I was pretty freaked out, and I contemplated whether or not I should tell my parents. But it was dark, and I didn't know whether or not my neighbor was yelling at me or at someone else that I couldn't see. I didn't know him very well. We had never spoken before. I didn't think there was any real reason to make a fuss over it. The next morning I was home alone, getting ready for school. I see my neighbor putzing around in his yard, and we make awkward eye contact through my living room window. I didn't think anything of it. Close to 8:30 that morning, I hear my dog in our backyard barking, and it started to sound vicious. As I'm in the bathroom, I can hear the back door open. I casually thought, it's just mom, but in the back of my mind I had a strange feeling it was my neighbor. My gut feeling was right. To this day I'm so thankful that I had listened to that small voice in the back of my head. We met up in the kitchen. There he was, standing 5 or 6 feet from me, with an 8-inch kitchen knife in his hand. I'll never forget the look on his face. He looked afraid, almost as if he didn't want to go through with what he was going to do. At the same time, he had this crazy look of lust in his eyes. He said, "Don't move." The only thought going through my head was, if you want to live, run. Now, you know when you have those nightmares where someone is chasing after you, but your body just feels really heavy? That's how my body felt at exactly that moment. I wanted to faint, and I'm so glad that I didn't. As I ran out of the house, I remember screaming, "No, no, no." I fell down the front stairs leading up to our porch, got up, and I must have knocked on 2 or 3 different houses before someone finally answered their door. My town's entire police force showed up. The guy ended up going back to his house. I guess he was an unsuccessful recovering alcoholic and had drank 2 liters of vodka the night before. He admitted to the police that he had been watching me through my bedroom window for months. When the police searched his home, they found photos of me that he had taken that explained in explicit detail what he wanted to do to me. I was riding my bike home late one night, and coming my way is a big guy with sunglasses on. He gets me to stop and says, "Do you mind if I ask you some questions?" The fact that he said questions weirded me out, so I said, "No, sorry, I have to go," and I started riding away. At the next block there was a red light, so I stopped. I look back, and the guy is running towards me. He is about 20 feet away, and I freak out and just go. He got as close as about 5 feet from me before I pulled away. I'm sprinting on my bike, and like 3 or 4 blocks away I'm far away, and I look back. He's still chasing me. I never pedaled so hard in my life all the way home. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.